Welcome back to another edition of the Here We Go podcast. I am Trent Gang, and as I'm sure somebody on this may have noticed, Wednesday, DK Metcalf is officially going to be a member of the Pittsburgh Steelers. This is kind of something that was crazy. Colin and I actually kind of split the difference on what this trade compensation was going to look like. It was a pick swap, which is something he was calling for earlier in the week. And then I actually got the second round pick part of it down. So second round pick and according to Adam Schefter, they're going to swap picks in the 6th and 7th rounds. Very possible. So I'm actually going to be talking about some of that. So I wanted to talk about what this does to the offense and any potential fallout that could also come from this. So I'm going to get into that question here in just a minute. So first and foremost, I mean, for anybody who is saying Omar Khan's been sitting on his hands, number one, it's not even the start of free agency yet. This is just the legal tampering period coming. A trade gets done, big time receiver, position of need for a couple of years now. This is a fantastic move by Omar Khan. First of all, to get a guy like DK Metcalf, to get the 5-year extension, you're pairing him up with George Pickens. This looks like a totally different wide receiver room now. So anybody complaining about this trade is kind of insane, in my opinion. There's people out there saying that we overpaid. First of all, they were calling for a first-round pick to start. We get a second and some pick swaps at the end. We didn't even have to give up a player. I thought maybe we'd have to give up a player. That's not even going to be the case. So I think it's a fantastic trade. Works for both teams. DK obviously wanted out of town from Seattle. We desperately needed a second receiver in this offense, somebody to take a little bit of pressure off George Pickens. So what would potential fallout be from this? So again, going back to the comment made here right off the bat, will they box for targets each game? I don't know. You're going to have two really strong personalities in that wide receiver room now. Part of the issue with having two alpha dogs in your same wide receiver room is you've got to find a way to make both of them happy. And I think that's going to be interesting. So we still don't even know who the quarterback is at this point in time. I still think a deal with Justin is something that could get done. I know a lot of people think that because he's testing free agency that means he's going to be leaving town. It's possible that Pittsburgh gets outbid. I'm sure they have a hard cap that they want to stop at. I still think the 2-year, $30 million thing is still in play, in my opinion. But it's going to come down to how motivated is Justin going to be to leave. I actually would make the argument that this trade right now is going to make it more enticing for Justin to come back here. I do agree. Art Smith is probably drooling right now. He's probably having the best night of his life after hearing this news. And yeah, Verts all day with Pickens and DK Metcalf. And I see, so this comes back to Justin Fields for me because he does have a nice deep ball. He doesn't put a good touch on the deep ball, but I mean, he can throw a good deep ball. It was something, I mean, he and Russ were, when, Justin was in Chicago and when Russ was playing for Denver, they actually rated really highly as two of, I think both were in the top 5 in deep balls, catchable deep balls that year. So I think this actually plays into Justin's hands. So I think there's going to be some people who are making an argument that now this makes it more likely that Russ comes back. I'm not sure. I think that it's an obvious connection because of the fact that Russ and DK's already played together. Russ was here last year. But I think that I still think there's a case to be made that this actually benefits Justin Fields if he does return too. Do they go after a more proven guy and go all in now? I don't know. It's going to be really interesting to see how the quarterback thing plays out. I'm not sure this changes their mind though a ton. I think you're giving weapons to whoever is going to be a quarterback, and that was an obvious need. So it doesn't matter who your quarterback is if you have no one to throw to, and George Pickens is getting bracketed on every play. Now this kind of takes some pressure off of him. allows him to play a little bit more freely. And I'll start this out too. I think there's a really, really good chance that I'm going to end up beating some crow on this because I honestly thought George Pickens was getting traded in this offseason. I think this move actually kind of makes it more likely not to trade George Pickens right now. That might sound a little counter-argumentative because of the fact that now you have a receiver. Should make it easier to trade George. I'd argue against it at this point. I think it actually means that you can win a playoff game because you have a more complete roster on your offense. Anybody complaining about the contract, it's being reported 5 years, $150 million of this DK Metcalf trade and signing that new contract as of Wednesday. You can't have it both ways. You can't complain that Van Jefferson is your wide receiver 2 on this roster and then turn around and be mad about DK Metcalf getting the bag. So I thought it was beneficial for the Steelers, both in the contract and trade compensation. It definitely helps this offense out a ton. It's going to help out whatever quarterback is here in 2025. And I think it helps the quarterback who is going to be here in 2026, whether it is the guy that they bring in this year or whether they go and sign or draft a guy, whatever they're going to do in 26. I think it's most likely, obviously, that they're going to draft a guy, maybe trade up to go get somebody. But either way, you're starting to build a roster around a guy. And at some point, this team had to put a little bit of money into the damn offense. I mean, that was just a given. They had to put some money in there. Yeah, I totally agree. So this is kind of where I'm at with this. Like now I'm starting to think that I'm going to be completely wrong on the Pickens thing. I think this makes it more likely that they're willing to try to sign him. So I really honestly think that this may benefit both George Pickens and whoever that quarterback's going to be, in my opinion. Yeah, we've definitely got some holes to fill here still. And I think this is just a sign of things to come. I've been saying that I expect this team to be pretty aggressive in the offseason here. This is going to be unlike anything that we've seen as a fan base. And I know everybody's going to say that this team, has a certain way of doing things, and this is going to be business as usual, and they're not going to really make splash plays. And even if you looked at the Patrick Queen contract, the way that they did it, it was the biggest contract that they've ever given out in free agency, but there were some easy outs in that contract as well. That clearly is not the case in this DK Metcalf trade. It's not the case in the DK Metcalf contract for what we know of it so far. Still a lot to be released on that before we actually have a really good idea of what that's going to look like. But I would say yes. This is are these the changes that Josina was talking about? I would say this is the start of those changes, and I think more could be coming. I still believe that there is definitely more coming down the line than what we're seeing even right now. So where do we go? Do we have the cornerback room starting to fill up a little bit more now too? Do we attack that in free agency and get aggressive there? I think Hobbs is a guy that you hear his name get thrown out a lot in that slot cornerback position. He would be the best slot corner that we've had since Mike Hilton was here. I think he could be an underrated signing, very similar to what we just saw with Deshaun Elliott this past year. Deshaun Elliott wasn't a guy that anybody talked about when they made that deal. Then by the time season's ending, he turns out to be one of the best defenders on the football field on a team full of stars on defense. So, there's still some more moves that I think that this team's going to make. I think this is just tipping the iceberg. I mean, we've got a ton of money to spend. I don't know exactly what the cap situation is going to be. But you got to figure there's probably about $42 million left. You're going to put some of that into the quarterback, obviously. And I think that's, part of why they're looking to get the deal done cheap, because they still want to build out the rest of the roster through this. So I've been on the Ward and Hobbs train now for a while. I think Ward, people are going to argue about his age a little bit, but he's playing at such a high level right now that I don't care. I would absolutely bring him in. 2 years at minimum, probably. I'd like to get him a 3-year deal. Hobbs, I don't know if they'll lock Hobbs up for 3 years or not, but I would give both those guys 3 years. to go along with JPJ. So I really think that this is the tipping of the iceberg in the free agent market for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think that this finally gives the fan base a little bit of hope that they're willing to invest in the offense. We've seen so much money being thrown out to the defense year after year after year. And obviously, this is a league that's driven by offense as well. We're investing in the trenches, both through the draft, through free agency, possibly. Maybe we see a guy like a Mitchell Melton being targeted there. I mean, that'd be somebody I would argue would be a splash play in free agency. So, I mean, there's a lot of moves that still could be made, and we have a ton of cap. Like I said, I don't know for sure. I'm not like a super good cap guru type guy, but I would think that the DK Metcalf, if it's coming in, what some people are reporting, maybe around $33 million a year, if that's accurate, then we should have probably about $42 million in cap left. So plenty of room to get your quarterback, plenty of room to go after some more guys in free agency and get yourself prepared to hopefully set up a really, really good draft class as well. So I love this move. I think it finally puts some faith in the offense. The offense can finally score some points because you're going to get some playmakers out there. And that's honestly how I want to see the draft approach too. I mean, anybody we're going to get on the offensive side of the ball, after seeing the 40 time for Johnson, I mean, do you want a running back running a 4.59 or a 4.61 or 4.57 and Devin Neal? Or would you rather have a Bashul Tootin who's going to, fly, Travion Henderson, who's a game breaker, one of these type of guys that you can throw in there. I mean, I know he's not a perfect fit schematically, but even like a RJ Harvey, I thought he had a really good combine. He looks like a really good runner too. Something like that. I mean, I want to start seeing some game breakers in there. And then you get Justin Fields in there. I think that's, for me, it still makes a ton of sense because he's such an athletic quarterback. You're really going to start making defenses guard all of these skill position players and have all 11 guys accounted for on every single play. The thing that I keep seeing starting to be thrown around right now is, would Pittsburgh draft a running back in round 1 because of this and go after a guy like, if Genty is still there, which I don't think he gets past the Cowboys, but if Genty's still there, would they be interested? I don't know. I still, if it's me, I probably wouldn't do it. If Amarian Hampton is still there, would they want to go after a guy like that? He's a special player as well. I just think you can still get running back later in this draft, and you can still invest heavily into better positions like the defensive line. If we don't attack an outside corner in this, does that change our draft strategy there? And maybe we go corner in round 1, something that not a lot of people has been talking heavily about. But I would say wide receiver is off the board in round 1 at this point now. So it's looking like defensive line is almost a lock. And if a guy like Kenneth Grant is there, I still think they're going to run that thing to the podium as quickly as they can get it there. So, but you're really giving yourself an opportunity now to really create an explosive offense. Even if you don't believe in Justin Fields as a quarterback, if they bring in a Sam Darnold, I'd argue I don't know that Sam Darnold's any better than Justin Fields. He had one really, really good year, and he's had a lot of really, really bad years. I don't know. I'm not a super big fan. I know that they were supposed to have interest there and talk, but let's be honest. If you're a quarterback and your arm actually works right now, Pittsburgh's got interest. I mean, if you're sitting at home throwing a football on the couch, Pittsburgh's probably checking you out to see if you can come play there. I mean, it's just, this team's desperate for a quarterback. Ever since Ben retired, there was no succession plan there. And it's still going to be a bridge quarterback situation no matter how you look at it. They could bring in a veteran now and try to sell out to win. Some people are really enticed by Aaron Rodgers at this point. Aaron Rodgers with DK Metcalf and George Pickens, Pat Freiermuth. I mean, this offense looks so much different with this one move. It's actually incredible what one move can do to kind of change the face of the organization. You're going to have a guy at running back now, assuming Jalen Warren's going to be the first, starter coming out of the gates here. he's more explosive than Najee was. So I think you're changing the dynamics of what the offense looks like a little bit. You get some playmaking ability here, some big plays. And I don't know. I still think like DK is quarterback proof. They're quarterback proofing this offense right now with this move. And that's a good thing to do. It's a really smart play. So it may be worth just extending George Pickens at this point and keeping the two paired up together with Pat Freiermuth and, Calvin Austin this year or Roman Wilson, whoever wins out that battle for the slot corner or the slot wide receiver position. Guys, it's late. I'm tired. I'm sorry, but I had to come on here. But whoever's that slot wide receiver, you got some speed and some playmaking there as well. So I think it's interesting what this does to help this offense. And Arthur Smith is going to have no excuses at this point. If the offensive line gels together, then he's going to have no excuse. I think the biggest question is going to be, how does Troy Falatanu do coming off of that injury, starting at right tackle? We've only seen him basically for one game. What's he going to look like? He looked really good in that one game, but will he continue to look good going in for a full season? Broderick Jones, does he make the move successfully to left tackle? Is he going to be a guy that's going to be an absolute liability over there? I don't know. He's going to be a huge question mark. Does Isaac Seumalo bounce back? Does Mason McCormick take another step forward? Zach Frazier is already an absolute stud. If this line makes positive strides forward, and they don't have to be a top 10 offensive line. Yeah, we want this line to be built like the Philadelphia Eagles. That was the game plan. I mean, you could see the front office had that in their mindset from day one. They want this to be built like Philadelphia's offense and just make this offensive line dominant. We're not there yet. This doesn't have to be that. We at least need to be in the middle of the pack. We have to be a top 15 offensive line or a top, 18 offensive line. We cannot be a bottom 5 offensive line again this year, or it won't matter what weapons you're putting on the field. So I think this move is going to really rely heavily on that development coming specifically from Broderick Jones, because he's the biggest question mark of everybody. I think it's fair to say that. But it really changes the dynamic of what you can do. I'll be really, really interested to see if they actually let this quarterback start using the middle of the field, because DK Metcalf can eat up the middle of the field. Yards after catch. We've seen George Pickens take some slant routes to the house and make explosive plays. Well, we start using the full field now, finally, now that we have 2 really good wide receivers in Pittsburgh. So I don't think that they, at this point, are going to move on from George Pickens. I think he's still going to be part of the plan for at least 2025. I don't know that they're going to do anything contractually until maybe after the season. So it's going to be interesting to see how that whole dynamic plays out. You're going to have 2 really strong personalities in that room. So I hope Arthur Smith is going to have plenty of Tylenol for all the headaches he's about to have, because 2 of those guys are going to be chirping in his ear all day long. So, but I'll tell you what, it's a good problem to have. You want 2 alphas in that room. And for anybody who says that Arthur Smith's offense isn't built for 2 wide receiver ones, I don't care. You build your team with as many talented guys as you can, and you figure it out. Maybe Arthur Smith needs to change his offense. If it doesn't accommodate 2 wide receiver ones, then maybe he needs to change some of the things that he's doing to make sure that you're getting both guys involved heavily and that the offense can go regardless of who the quarterback is. I think that might be where this ends up needing to go. So we'll see. But you're going to find out real quick if Arthur Smith's going to be in Pittsburgh for a long time here as an offensive coordinator. It's going to be really interesting to see now, do they make a strong push to get this Justin Fields thing done? Because I still think he's a front runner. I mean, it's not just me being like a Buckeye homer. I know I'm the Buckeye homer, and I'll admit that. I own that. And I don't think Justin Fields is going to be the franchise quarterback, most likely. But I will say this, when he first got DJ Moore, you could see a ton of progress in his game. He and DJ Moore actually put up some pretty good numbers together. when he was targeting DJ Moore, his numbers looked really good, and he was a really good deep ball thrower. But once you kind of went to anyone else, those numbers fell off dramatically. Well, now he's got two really good wide receivers that he can throw to, and I would give him the keys and just say, let's go. Let's see what happens. Either you're going to be a franchise guy or you're going to run us into the quarterback draft sweepstakes in 2026. And it's pretty much that simple. Going with a 42 years old now, Aaron Rodgers, who looked like he could barely move around on the field last year, did not look like he ever fully healed from that injury. Will he ever fully heal from that injury? I don't know. Even the velocity on his ball, nothing looked anything like vintage Aaron Rodgers. So for me, I'm still out on him. I know there's some people that really think that he should be the guy. Russ, does this make it more likely to re-sign Russ? I still think Russ is plan B, not plan A. I don't think the DK Metcalf move changes that any. Some people may disagree with that. Does anybody else out there? I mean, Kirk Cousins might be another guy outside of Sam Darnold. Like if you're talking about some of the older guys, Kirk Cousins, he looked like another guy. I mean, if you talk about Aaron Rodgers couldn't move, I mean, Kirk Cousins looked like his feet were just standing in concrete. So he was bad. I mean, he was really, really bad. So I don't think there's going to be a lot of really better options. And it's pretty much going to come down to the Jets or the Steelers for Justin Fields. And again, does Justin want to learn another offense under another offensive coordinator? Or we just showed that we're putting some investment into this offense, run it back, figure out a fair deal. And a lot of people are going to get excited because his agent said he wants to test free agency with Justin. Of course, he's going to say that. He's trying to make money for his guy. So does that mean he's leaving? Not necessarily. The GMs are going to say one thing. The agents are going to say something completely different. And you just got to wait and see whether or not a deal is going to be done. But I mean, nothing should be taken in absolution when you hear these reports coming from these insiders, because if they're talking to the agent, then the agent's going to absolutely tell them one thing. And they might be using that comment as leverage for the team that they actually want to get a deal done with. So like the agent may be saying, yeah, we're going to test free agency because we know New York's interested in our guy. Well, that might be just a tactic to drive the number up from Pittsburgh. It's not necessarily like, hey, he's definitely gone. And I think there's probably some motivation on both sides. Like Pittsburgh wants to keep Justin. I think Justin wants to stay in Pittsburgh. He doesn't want to go through learning another offense again. Does he want to get back to playing with a guy like Garrett Wilson? Yeah, probably. But who else are you throwing to? Could you make an argument that New York's got a better situation than Pittsburgh does? No. He can win here, and he potentially could change his career. I mean, if you're going to throw the ball to George Pickens, DK Metcalf, Pat Freiermuth over anything that New York's going to have next year, you've got Garrett Wilson. They'll probably have to trade a guy, sign a guy in the draft. I mean, like their tight end situation is not great. They don't have many, they have the Aaron Rodgers hand-me-downs, that are still left over from at wide receiver. Adams is gone now. So like, it's not a better situation for him. So I would imagine this deal is going to get done. It's just going to be a matter of time. And I think this is the start of a really good offseason for us. And it's going to be a really exciting offseason. I think this is going to be the first time we can actually say that this is going to be an exciting offense, potentially, and an exciting offseason to be a Steeler fan, because usually ours are pretty boring because we don't go after big fish. Clearly that's changed this year, and there could be some more coming. So that's about all I had for all you guys tonight. So just wanted to jump on here to talk about that, give some initial thoughts. I know the George Pickens trade stuff's going to heat up because of the fact that we got DK Metcalf. I think it's going to go the other way now. And I was the guy saying that I really think what time tomorrow do you expect QBDs? I don't know if it's going to be tomorrow. Free agency, like the actual tampering period starts tomorrow. but the contracts can't be signed until Wednesday. So it's possible they get something done. I mean, they can re-sign Justin right now. So you can re-sign your own guys at any point in the offseason, but I hope we hear it soon. I don't know when we would hear it, but I really hope we hear it soon, because I think that's going to go a long way to settling the fan base down a little bit, because everybody's all in a panic and an uproar over quarterback. But again, I'm still going to stand my ground on this. I still think it's Justin Fields. It's not my personal wish list necessarily, even though I do think he's logically the guy who makes the most sense. But I just think that both parties are going to be motivated to get that one done. The only way I could see it not being Justin Fields at this point is if he drives his number way up past what Pittsburgh's willing to pay him. If he's asking 2 years for $40 million, I don't know if Pittsburgh's going to go that high. If New York wants to go that high, then that's probably when he walks, and then they turn back to Russ. So it should be interesting. We'll see how this goes. But this is it's going to be I really think this is going to be a fun offseason for us. So again, I appreciate you all tuning in, throwing out your comments, asking questions, all that good stuff. I'm going to sign off for the night. So as always, like, share, subscribe, all of that good stuff. Look forward to talking to you all soon. Have a good evening.